Okay, wow, we have 60 investors in the same room. We've been together for 2 hours, and no one's talked about ChatGPT. Well, that's over. Time to talk about AI. We blinked, and a computer suddenly understood all human knowledge. That was a couple months ago, and it's legitimately the case. We can debate it at the margins, and you probably think you've heard every hot take there is about it. I want to bring you something very different. I want to bring you a very hot take that I'm quite sure you have not heard before. And to do so, we've flown in the CEO of Ten63 Therapeutics, Marcel Frenkel, who's a longtime friend of mine. He went through batch 8 in San Francisco in 2019. He's just raised a great Series A round. They are increasingly recognized as one of the few best companies in the world using computers and AI to design drugs. So thank you, Marcel. And I would love to help the audience understand something here for a second. So I'm going to paint into our conversational space in this room in front of us. We want to have a conversation about AI, but we need to understand a little bit about biology. Why don't you help us sort of set the perspective on this idea that now a computer can essentially replace a human, and why that's not the only thing we should be thinking about.
Yeah, by the way, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a huge pleasure to be here speaking with all of you and hearing these great presentations. So I think we saw a computer now pass the bar and pass MCAT, and a lot of things that, humans feel are difficult. But I think the perspective that I'm bringing to this is that what we're seeing is AI do things that humans can do. For instance, my dad this year turned 73. He also passed the bar this year. And he was asleep for most of his law school classes, I guarantee you that. So I think it's undoubtedly extremely impressive that we're seeing technology rise to this level. And I think it's going to transform how we do a lot of work and a little bit how our society works. But the thing that we're really focused at Ten63 is, can we push these technologies to do things that humans can't do? Can we push these technologies to go beyond what the human capability is? And drug discovery is really the edge here. We've seen, in my opinion, the only case of AI really doing this, which is AlphaFold, where a computer was able to predict how the shape of a protein looks like. And proteins, as you know, are these tiny machines inside your bodies. There's thousands of different ones. And the computer was able to predict just from a sequence what these would look at. And humans are horrible at this. And it's really the first example of a computer really doing something humans can't.
Great. So to bring it back to Ten63, a little bit of biology, which is that in cancer tumors, they disguise themselves from our immune system. As they grow in biomass, like any organ, they need a blood supply, so they grow their own vasculature. And they want to grow and grow and grow forever. So they turn themselves into having these stem cell-like properties to have this eternal growth. All of those hallmark mechanisms of cancer tumors have upstream an origin point, which is the set of family of genes we call in this sector MYC, or the MYC family of genes. They are arguably one out of very few absolute holy grails for pharma, and they have always been. But no one has ever been able to drug them. And because they have not drugged them, there is no really success data to build off of. Now, what Marcel has done is quite astounding, is the world-leading potency of hitting MYC with not drugs yet, but drug compounds that are very, very promising. And what this has meant is to design a computer to go into space where there isn't an enormous library of data to already learn on. I would love to hear today about how you could possibly do that. And congratulations for getting to that point.
Thank you, Paul. So MYC, a little bit of MYC here. Discovered in 1979. The link to cancer by the mid-'80s was absolutely clear. And in the last 40 or so years, there have been over 1 million attempts at inhibiting MYC. Every single one has failed. in about a year, we were able to develop compounds that outcompeted anything previously in the world around MYC. So that's a little bit of what we got to. Now, the reason that we were able to do this is that you can't really use, as Poe was saying, you can't learn it because there's no data on it. Nobody has been able to do this. So how do you really find these solutions? And what we were able to do was really build an institution that from the ground up is really taking every single piece of data that we do make and learning from it, but also combining state-of-the-art physics with a form of AI that allows you to do hyper-efficient search, and also the ability to get data and feed it back. And this kind of ground-up system that you need to build from day one. You can't really just get a company that already exists and try to bring this in. You really need to think about all these things being integrated are what allowed us to do this.
Well, is that one of the core reasons why pharma can't just do what you do? Like, yeah. It's a central question to all of us. We are investing in startups, and we obviously they do partner with pharma, and but at the core, why can a startup do this in pharma, which theoretically does have more data than you do it?
So to put it in perspective, any given large pharma company has about an order of magnitude more data than what's publicly available. So off the bat, they have more data. What really matters here is that the data that we need just doesn't exist. No one has it. So that's number one. To put this in perspective, 80% of the proteins in the human body are undruggable. Nobody knows how to drug them. So if you're ever disappointed about health and where it is, imagine fixing a machine that you can't touch 80% of the pieces. And that puts you into perspective a little bit what we're talking about in human health. And 1063 really focuses on changing that. So the real reason starts with there's not enough data. The second reason is, from day one, the people making decisions have to be literate on AI. The people making decisions have to have these platforms in mind, and the whole institution has to be built to really be able to use and take maximum benefit of these machines. If not, you have a bunch of bad data or uncharacterized data that you can't do anything with.
So you take a physics-based model that doesn't need learning, but it still correctly or closely models the molecular space that you're talking about. And then you're running AI on top of that to search within those possibilities. So for the audience here, explain ideal molecules and how you use this sort of fail test to then create your search space to then iterate in.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll ask everybody to kind of imagine something with me. So the drug-like chemical space has more stars than the universe. So if you just look at the stars, that's pretty much what you're searching after. And it's extremely challenging to find what drug within that enormous space actually would do what you want to do. So what we've really built is a system that can mathematically provably, which means without any loss of accuracy, independent of an increase in space, explore this immense chemical space to find what we call ideal molecules. And the reason that we do this is that the biggest error now with physics-based models is that the energy functions that we use have to be Newtonian due to computational cost. But at these very small scales, Newtonian physics breaks apart, and you really need to go quantum. But the ability to search that space with quantum technology just doesn't exist currently. There's no computer in the planet that can do this. You would need a computer the size of Saturn to kind of run these simulations. So what we've built is an ability to just search the space extremely quickly to find molecules for which they're so obviously the right ones that even a computer using Newtonian physics and then an approximation of quantum can get them right. And
let's help the audience. Can someone advance to slide 1 or just click 1 on there? I think.
Slide 1.
Yeah, just advance 1 slide. When we talk about modeling quantum effects in a drug here, just hit the clicker.
Yeah.
Just hit the button. Go back. Never mind then.
Never mind. But what happens? So
many of you have seen drawings or diagrams of a ball and stick drug going into a large protein, and you can imagine that's what you're trying to do, is build a little part to fit into there. But at a quantum level, our world is shaking, vibrating, squiggling, and dramatically moving thousands upon thousands of times a second. Everything is in motion. So it's like fixing a machine that's where you can't touch 80% of the parts, and it's running, and it's on a roller coaster. And modeling that shaking and vibration is something that, where it's widely recognized now, the 1063 physics-based models do that best.
Yeah, and it's about how you search through that space with that level of complexity. And the real trick here, if you're thinking about how could you possibly do this, is that there's these very, very rare things. We call them ideal molecules, and they exist once every trillion times. And these solutions are so good that you can actually find them, but you just got to search this massive amount of space extremely accurately. And to put it very simply, that's what we do. We search for these very rare stars that are perfect, and then the computer can recognize them, and that's how we discover these drugs.
Always want to bring it back to the humans. We care about ourselves more than your computers. But with ChatGPT, the idea is that an ordinary person, enabled with the chat system, could essentially act like a really smart expert instantly. So your system is called Beyond, beyond the existing druggable space. If we handed Beyond to an ordinary oncology lab, not just hand it to anybody here in the room, could they take Beyond and do what you do the way that we can do that with ChatGPT?
I think probably not, unfortunately. The truth is, these computers, they answer you what you ask. So if you ask a bad question, they'll give you a bad solution. So you really need to know how to phrase the question. So what we've really focused on building is the best team possible with really great scientists. A lot of our team has over 30 years of experience of drug discovery to really ask the right questions so that the machine can then find the right solutions.
Okay, last question here is, very quickly, please. How does 1063 have optionality and ways of financing in a market like this, no matter how incredibly exciting it is what you're doing?
Yeah, so we really look at what other companies have done, and one of the pioneering computational companies in drug discovery actually has pretty much a subsidiary called Nimbus Therapeutics, and they just licensed a drug that had never reached FDA approval for $4 billion up front, with another $2 billion in downstream revenue plus royalties. So really there's a massive opportunity in our field to, way before FDA approval, really license for a significant amount of money these assets. So that's a very large opportunity for us, and especially with targets like MYC that the whole industry has been dying to get their hands on. We believe that when we're ready, and they'll be hopefully sooner rather than later, the market will be there.
Great. Marcel, you're off the hot seat. Thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.